Number 5. The Sulu Archipelago and Sea. The Sulu Archipelago, located in the southwestern regions of the Philippines, is known for its stunning natural beauty, but it is also known for the complex challenges that have risen. The region consists of many small islands, including Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, and Basilan, and is surrounded by the Sulu Sea. The current state of the Sulu Archipelago and its surrounding seas involves a mixture of socio-economic, security, and political concerns. The Sulu Archipelago has been labeled as a level 4 safety risk by the United States Bureau of Consular Affairs, and it is strongly recommended that you do not travel or visit the area. The Sulu Archipelago is currently facing high rates of crime, civil unrest, rebel forces, and abductions. Armed groups are currently and consistently plotting abductions, bombings, and other attacks, with no discretion or care for citizen casualties. They attack with little to no warning and specifically target tourist locations like markets, malls, or government facilities. Rebels are abducting people on land and sea for ransom, bombings, and other attacks that target U.S. citizens, foreigners, civilians, and local government institutions, security forces, and authorities. The U.S. government has a limited ability to help or provide services to civilians because U.S. government employees have to obtain a special authorization to travel to the affected areas. The Philippine government declared that they are in a state of national emergency. There are a lot of pickpockets, scammers, internet scams, and credit card scams. People are warned to turn down offers of food, drinks, or rides from strangers. Travelers traveling alone have been abducted after they were slipped a strong sedative. Because of the current climate, the Sulu Archipelago is not a safe place to visit, and it is definitely not a safe place to live. I think that too often people think that wars and organized criminal attacks are a thing of the past, or that they're exaggerated. They're not. If anything, the attacks that are shared are often sugar-coated. This is all happening now. People right now, people your age, people my age are being killed, tormented, abducted, essayed, and are living in constant rational fear. A lot more attention definitely needs to be brought to the situation, and the fact that any coverage surrounding the Philippines is so unbelievably minimal and inaccessible is so saddening, and I'm sure frustrating for anyone who has loved ones in the Philippines or lives in the Philippines themselves. Number 4. De La Salle University. De La Salle University is a private Catholic research and educational university. It was established by the Institute of the Brothers of the Christian Schools in 1911 as De La Salle College, which changed to De La Salle University in 1975 when it was granted university status. When it was founded, the De La Salle brothers were nervously reluctant to open the school because Americans insisted that the first school made should only be available to the ruling Filipino elite. However, a school for the upper-class children of ruling elite families who need good moral and spiritual training was opened. By 1921, the school had 425 students. The school offered amazing programs and was widely appreciated for the educational staff and grand accommodations. But during the Second World War, De La Salle was used as a secret shelter for displaced citizens, wounded soldiers, families, and freedom fighters at the beginning of the Japanese occupation. But on January 2nd, 1942, it was occupied by the Imperial Japanese Army and made into military defense quarters. Several bombings and attacks occurred on campus, but classes did continue until they were discontinued and forced to vacate the campus at the demand of Japanese forces. Most people left the campus, but Egbert Xavier Kelly refused to leave. So, on February 7th, 1945, he was abducted by Japanese soldiers, harmed severely, and then killed. On February 12th, just after noon, 20 Japanese soldiers forcibly entered the campus and massacred 16 boys who resided in the chapel of the campus and an additional 25 other residents. There were only 22 survivors. It's now said that the ghosts of the students, teachers, and families are searching for safety. They're still trapped in the same place they died. It has since become a dark tourism location, which a lot of people find to be extremely strange. Tourism that focuses on places with dark or tragic histories, like cemeteries, war sites, churches, or sites that people passed at. Since the site is an active school, tourists are not very welcome to visit the location. Many people do try to sneak in, but it's highly discouraged. and any overly curious onlookers may be arrested, charged with trespassing, or have legal action taken out against them.
In at number 3 we have Rio Tinta. If a river is filled with deep red and orange water, you might want to avoid swimming in it. This is the case with the Rio Tinta River, located in Sierra Morena Mountains of Andalusia. The unnatural red color of the river is due to the iron salts and sulfates in particular. Additionally, as the high acidic levels, as it has a pH of 1.7 to 2.5. Furthermore, the river is rich in heavy metals, such as gold, silver and copper, which made the river popular among ancient cultures and history. Now, due to 5,000 years of mining pollution, the river became an extreme environment, breeding chemolithotropic organisms such as iron-oxidizing bacteria and sulfur-oxidizing bacteria. The unique acidic chemical makeup is so abnormal that scientists have actually compared its properties to Mars. This is due to the fact that Mars and Rio Tinto have jarosite, an iron and potassium sulfates. Also, the Red Planet and Red River also both contain large quantities of methane gas, leading scientists to conclude that if there was water on Mars, it would probably look a lot like Rio Tinto. As a result, astrobiologists have begun to treat the Rio Tinto as a natural laboratory to test the techniques astronauts might use in identifying Martian life. Digging deep under the river's acidic base, scientists have found a variety of bacteria and microorganisms. Coming in at number 2 we have Satur River. Located in West Java, Indonesia, the Satur River is another you'd want to avoid. The reason why Satur River is deadly is because of something man-made. Garbage. The waters are so filled with non-biodegradable waste and harmful chemicals that it's known to be the world's most polluted river due to humans. There are over 200 textile factories lining the riverbanks, and the dyes and chemicals like arsenic and mercury are dumped all over the river. Combine here the millions of residents who treat the river like a huge trash bin. Every day, no less than 20,000 tons of waste and 340,000 tons of wastewater are disposed of directly into once clear and pristine waterways of the Satur River. To understand how polluted this river is, at some places you cannot even see the water as the surface is completely filled with waste and garbage. And if you are able to see the water, you would see it as an odd color due to the sheer amount of toxic chemicals being dumped into the river by industries. Because of all of this, since 2008, 60% of the river's fish species have been destroyed. Yet despite those very poor conditions, the Satur River is vital for the 25 million people who daily depend on it for agriculture, water and electricity. Due to people depending on this heavily polluted water for various reasons, many now suffer from various skin diseases ranging from scabies to infections, not to mention respiratory distress due to inhaling factory smoke. In addition, the poor water quality due to waste and pollution also damages the crops of farmers in the surrounding area. Safe to say you don't want to swim in these waters, if not because of the chemicals, because of the smell. And finally, in at number 1 we have Jacob's Well. Found in Texas, USA, this 30-foot natural well fed by crystal clear water has been a long-time attraction for Texas locals and tourists during the hot summer months. An artesian spring revered by Native Americans for millennia, Jacob's Well has been flowing out of a natural underground reservoir known as the Trinity Aquifer for perhaps millions of years. It's the source of the Cypress Creek, but also home to extensive underground chambers. Many dive into the spring, which extends for over a mile below the surface into an intricate cave system. Some say it's the trip of a lifetime, but it comes at a cost, as many have lost their lives diving into Jacob's Well. A dive inside Jacob's Well might look like a lot of fun, but remember it can also be very dangerous, as at least 9 people have died diving into Jacob's Well, which is quite a lot considering the number of people who visit the area, prompting it to be known as one of the most dangerous diving spots in the world. Descending 9 meters down the well, you'll find the first chamber. Go further down and you'll reach the second chamber, which is 24 meters below the surface. This is where the danger begins because of a passage that looks like an exit but instead can trap the diver. There are also 3rd and 4th chambers that await, but these involve squeezing through a very narrow passageway that is so small the diver must remove their tanks. Another dangerous part about diving in Jacob's Well is that the narrow tunnels combined with gravel and silt flooring can make visibility a major issue, particularly if the divers aren't careful not to stir up the loose material. Though so many people risk their lives to dive into Jacob's Well because of the alert of doing something incredibly dangerous. Deep in the cave there aren't that many plants or animals, but around the entrance and even in the first chamber there are signs of life. We see turtles, several species of fish, catfish and other animals that have entered the cave and lost their way, and which can't get out. With all that being said, it's safe to say to swim here is at your own risk.
Number 5. Har Villa, Singapore. I love a theme park. Who doesn't? Nothing like walking around, getting to zip around on a roller coaster on a hot summer day and pay $9 for a water bottle. But after a while, you know, all the parks start to blend together. You go down one death-defying drop, you've seen them all, and you seek newer thrills. Now that could be bigger coasters, or it could be a trip to Har Villa, Singapore's infamous scary theme park where the main attractions are incredibly vivid, detailed statues depicting the punishment of crimes and what it's like to go to hell. Initially built in the 30s to be a fun place to teach children about Buddhist, Confucian, and Taoist mythology, it was abandoned during the Second World War when Japanese forces used it as a vantage point to spot incoming ships. It would get rebuilt during the 80s, where it now became the slightly more than unnerving warning about behaving that it is today. Now the main attraction here isn't Space Mountain or Behemoth, but rather the 10 Courts of Hell, a giant exhibition showing all these little statues being gruesomely punished for their sins in the mortal world to warn children to behave. Thieves and gamblers are frozen in blocks of ice, people who cheat are cursed are thrown onto a tree of knives. Basically any scary way you could be punished for doing something bad is depicted here. A lot of it I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to mention under YouTube's guidelines. There's a pretty fun monster named Hufa Shize who is shown carrying out the punishments to the helpless little statues that inhabit the park. He's almost like a mascot. Now, for what it's worth, there are some other dioramas and statuettes in the park, and they're not all people getting thrown into spike pits. There's some depictions of some Singapore folk tales and some old myths and stuff, but the 10 Pits of Hell is the real attraction here. I think what this place really needs though is just like one water slide or something, or a roller coaster. Doesn't even have to be a big one, you know, just something to mix up the thrills a little bit. And if you're looking for more thrills and don't want to leave the comfort of your home, I totally get it, because all the thrills are here on Top 5 Scary. We've got just about everything scary or freaky under the sun, anything you can think of: cryptids, aliens, true crime, conspiracies, fake crime. We've got all of it and more. So click on through, subscribe, stay scared, but stay watching this video, okay? We worked hard on it. Number 4, the Door to Hell, Derwez, Turkmenistan. Coming in at our next entry is all the way in Turkmenistan, Derwez, referred colloquially as the Door to Hell. So, you know, that's kind of the vibe we're going for here. This unintentionally terrifying tourist destination is a collapsed natural gas field that's been perpetually burning for the last 50 years, and whoa, does it make quite a postcard. They say the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long, but this thing is burning pretty bright, and it's been burning for a sincerely long time, so who's to say how accurate that aphorism is? The exact origins of the Door to Hell are unknown, as the area is a bit remote and nobody really knows when it started. To quote the philosopher William Joel, it's always been burning since the world was turning. Now there have been some attempts to extinguish this mighty flame, but it is a little more difficult than just tossing a bucket of water over it, as the toxic fumes gushing out of it make it difficult to even get close to it, and that's before talking about just how incredibly hot a giant pit of burning fire and gas is. Only one person has ever descended inside the pit, and he needed to be equipped with a heat-resistant suit as well as a Kevlar harness. He wasn't just going in there. Interestingly, on this expedition, he discovered that there were microbial life forms existing down inside the pit, which could be proof of some tiny little demons. Now, I'll leave you with this one last fun little tidbit about the crater. Many first-hand accounts of visitors, campers, and tourists to the pit have reported that they have seen hordes of spiders en masse sacrificing themselves into the crater, all walking in and burning alive instantly. Now, it's definitely possible that the spiders are just drawn to the bright light in the middle of an otherwise fairly dark desert, but when a mass of spiders are all sacrificing themselves ritualistically into a giant pit of fire called the Gates of Hell, I'm not really sure how much scientific explanations mean to me anymore. Anyway, I just thought you'd enjoy that mental image, and I thought you'd enjoy never sleeping again thinking about that.
Number 3 on this list is Harvey Point Defense Testing Activity Facility. This site is located in North Carolina and is definitely something that the government doesn't like to advertise. Ever wonder where the elites of the elite train? Like the super secret, super advanced soldiers that only come out for the crazy covert missions? Well, this is that place. Wikipedia writes, specialty military air operations are located at this facility as the installation has 2 usable landing fields and plans for a 3rd. The FAA Charlotte Sectional Aeronautical Chart identifies this area as special use airspace R5301, which is continuously restricted from general aviation traffic from the surface of an altitude of 14,000 feet above mean sea level. Areas of Albermay Sound adjacent to the facility are also under restricted airspace, R5302, which is under the operational authority of Giant Killer, or whichever ATC has controlling authority over the airspace at that time. Harvey Point is also used for CIA paramilitary and counterterrorism courses that involve high explosives and ballistics. The explosives are used to simulate terrorist bombs and can be heard for miles in the surrounding communities. It was also used by DevGru to train for the raid that killed Osama bin Laden in a scale mock-up of his secret compound. Pretty much all of the super elite military governmental stuff is going down at this spot. The team that took out Osama bin Laden trained here. Like, it really doesn't get more secret and advanced than that. Also, there have been a ton of rumors about the types of weapons that are being developed here too. Incredibly advanced aircraft that will have capabilities hard for us to even understand are apparently being built here. The advancements may not just stop with equipment either, but may even go further to people as well. Obviously, Iron Man and Captain America are superheroes and they aren't real, but if there ever was a site where the government was to be experimenting with things like that, then this would be it. Either incredibly advanced war bodysuits or literally making superhumans, then this could be the place where all that goes down. Number 2 on this list is Janette Island. Janette Island is located in the East Siberian Sea and belongs to the Russians. This island is shrouded in mystery though for the history it has had with Google Earth. Similarly to our other creepy Alaskan island, when you go on to Google Earth, you can't actually see anything here. In fact, for a while, all you could see was a black blob where an island should be, and then more recently it was changed so that there's literally no landmass here at all. The Sun writes, "It's not clear why the island is blurred, although there have been issues around whether the territory belongs to Russia or the USA. Some conspiracy theorists have suggested the spot is an ideal location for a secret Russian military base as it's relatively close to the US and Canada. Google often blocks out military locations on its Maps tool, including air bases in Germany, missile silos in Russia, and bases in Afghanistan. Images of the island were provided to Google by the International Bathymetric Chart of the Arctic Ocean, a project to map the Arctic Ocean initiated in St. Petersburg, Russia. This Russian military base thing has definitely been gaining some traction. As the Sun said, this base would be pretty close to North America, which is something Russia would definitely want. It's also super secluded and the perfect spot to be conducting some really questionable experiments or projects that you don't want prying eyes of the world to see. When Google was inevitably asked about why they don't have a picture for this, the spokesperson for them declined to comment. And number 1 on this list is Zenam. This is a Russian city and one that's largely been kept off the radar since its birth because it's something that the Russian government doesn't want anyone to know about. Passport Symphony says, Zenam was founded in 1948 as a missile test range facility under the name of Kasputin Yar. Multiple launches of test rockets and satellites were carried out at this site throughout the years. Eventually, Kasputin Yar became a cosmodrome in 1966, and like the other cities on this list, it wasn't shown on the map until the 1990s. There are many things that make Zenam the most mysterious city in Russia, and one of them is a UFO crashing that happened in the 1950s. Some even argue that this incident allowed the Russians to design Sputnik and achieve an early lead in the space race. This story was kept secret and only recently became known to the media. This made Kasputin Yar known as the Russian Roswell. However, note that this isn't the only mystery that happened at Zenam, but rather the only one that made it public. The site's function was interrupted after the fall of the Soviet Union, but it began working again in 1998. We got missile launches, we got weapon development, UFO landings. It's no wonder that the Russians don't want anybody catching on to this place. The fact that it was literally around for almost 50 years before it even appeared on a map is super questionable as well. What the heck was going on at this place for 50 years that was so secretive that they couldn't have anyone even knowing about its existence? One has to think that this place is similar to Area 51 in America. I personally wouldn't be surprised if Russia's still using this as a spot to do some really scary and probably pretty questionable experiments without anybody knowing. Those could involve aliens, genetic mutations, maybe even advanced weaponry development. It's hard to say truly what's going on at this place, and it's likely that Russia kinda wants to keep it that way. Number 5 on this list is Point Pleasant. Now I feel like most of you have probably heard of this one before, but Mothman. Wikipedia says, in West Virginia folklore, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15, 1966 to December 15, 1967. The first newspaper report was published in the Point Pleasant Register, dated November 16, 1966, titled, "Couple See Man-Sized Bird, Creature, Something." The national press soon picked up the reports and helped spread the story across the United States. Since that first sighting, Mothman has been seen hundreds of times over. And let me just be clear that this isn't something that you want to run into. Cryptid Wiki says Mothman is described as a bipedal, winged humanoid. Despite his name, which was given to him by newspapers, he is in no way moth-like and has an appearance more like that of a large humanoid owl. His coloration varies from black, gray, to even brown, although it's usually the darker shades. He's often reported to be about 7 feet tall, with a wingspan of about 10 to 15 feet or more, plus the ability to fly over 100 miles per hour. Anyone who gets a close look at the Mothman seems to suffer from extreme fear and psychological distress, sometimes lasting for months or years afterwards. In particular, people say that a sense of pure evil overcomes them when they see Mothman's eyes. Just because people have seen this thing before and lived to tell about it doesn't mean that you will too. I bet there are tons of people who have seen it and then that's it, game over. Going to Point Pleasant runs the real risk that you might disappear. Number 4 on this list is the West Virginia Penitentiary. This is one of the most haunted prisons in the United States, and it's for good reason. Now, not only is this prison deeply haunted right now, but you might run the very risk of disappearing if you were to go there. I should also note that when it was functional and operating as a prison, a lot of inmates would actually disappear as well. Over 1,000 men died at this prison. This is a large reason why it's haunted to this day. They died from hanging, from riots, from taking their own life. This prison saw tons of atrocities, and it was a horrible place while it was operating, and is still a horrible place even now that it's shut down. One of the reasons this prison was destined for failure is because they decided to build the damn thing on some ancient burial grounds. I don't know how many times we need to go over this, but guys, let's stop building stuff on burial grounds. Seriously, like, it's not cool to those people, and it's also just not gonna make for a good place. I can literally guarantee it. All the death that has happened on this place has left its mark. The Travel Channel says, though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. Stay away from this prison at all costs, folks.
Coming in at number 3, we have Eagle's Nest Sinkhole. Known as the Mount Everest of cave diving, the Eagle's Nest Sinkhole is one of the most dangerous diving spots on Earth, and just like Everest, this natural wonder has killed those attempting to witness its beauty. This diving spot can be found in Florida, USA. On its surface, the body of water looks like an ordinary pond, but beneath the surface, divers can explore a sinkhole that descends into a system of wide underwater passages that reach depths of up to 90 meters. The spot is so dangerous that there is a warning sign before entering the site saying, "Stop, prevent your death, there's nothing in this cave worth dying for," with an image of the Grim Reaper on it. This cave system is dangerous because it's very easy to become lost, and there is no safe section where you can get your bearings. This cave is infamous and unforgiving. Even among experts, local knowledge and first-hand experience is mandatory. In places, the cave system inside Eagle's Nest is extremely tight. It's so narrow that divers divers must squeeze and squirm through claustrophobic openings. Sometimes it's a struggle to make it through with their gear, while in other areas the cave system opens into giant caverns. They're named with grandiose descriptions like ballrooms and super rooms and the pits. The system is beautiful, but it's a dangerous beauty. This site has drawn many untrained and unqualified explorers to tragic deaths. Because of the total darkness and extreme depths combined with the complicated cave network to create a dangerous diving experience for those who are not prepared. In at number 2 we have Blue Lagoon. Don't get it confused with the beautiful and healing hot spring in Iceland. The Blue Lagoon that we are talking about is located in the UK. The lagoon can be found in Buxton and is known for its stunning colour and great number of visitors every year. This body of water is one of the most visited tourist attractions in the Park District. While this visually stunning lake with its lush blue waters looks like a tropical paradise, it's not quite the lavish pool you'd expect. The enticing and exotic colouring is caused by the caustic chemicals used in the stones during the now defunct quarrying process. The Blue Lagoon in England has now collected so many minerals from nearby mining that the calcium oxide buildup has led to an extremely high pH level in the water below. The water has such a drastically high pH level that the natural pool has an alkalinity comparable to that of ammonia or bleach. Thus, you might want to avoid swimming in this lake because if you do, just a few minutes in the deceptively beautiful waters can cause a whole host of health issues. A number of clearly posted signs leading up to the pool warn visitors that the water is toxic enough to cause skin and eye irritations, stomach problems, and fungal infections. The lagoon was once a gorgeous aqua color, which is what led to so many swimmers thinking it was harmless, but has since been dyed black to make swimmers think twice before diving into its toxic waters. In at number 1 we have Lake Kaiu. Lake Kaiu can be found in Rwanda, Africa. Posing as one of the strangest bodies of water, this lake has an unusual set of properties. Though Kaiu doesn't behave like most deep lakes, this is because the lake is considered an exploding lake, which means that the lake could erupt. This is due to the unstable ground afforded to it by a nearby volcano. This scenic beauty of Lake Kaiu with its green hills and crystal clear water is highly deceptive, as deep within these waters there is an enormous quantity of potentially explosive gases. Kaiu is one of the string of lakes lining the eastern African Rift Valley, where the African continent is being slowly pulled apart by tectonic forces. The resulting stresses thin the Earth's crust and trigger volcanic activity, creating hot springs below Kaiu that feed carbon dioxide and methane into the lake's bottom layers. Kaiu is a fairly deep lake and can get around 1500 feet at its deepest point. Due to the great depth of this lake, it creates so much pressure that these gases remain dissolved. Thousands of years of volcanic activity surrounding the lake has caused a massive accumulation of methane and carbon dioxide to dissolve in the depths of Kaiu, enough to prove potential destruction in the rare event they were released. If triggered, a limnic eruption would cause a huge explosion of gas from deep waters to the surface, resulting in large waves and a poisonous gas cloud that would put the lives of millions at risk. This hasn't been a concern until recently in 2021, where a nearby active volcano became active and destroyed hundreds of homes. This volcano created a large earthquake that shocked the area, leaving an explosive lake ready to explode. Both Rwanda and Democratic Republic of the Congo people live in fear of the lake's harmful potential, especially since there have been stories of swimmers disappearing into the depths of the lake have been spread. If you ended up actually swimming in the lake, the first thing you would notice is how warm the water is. Secondly, the methane mixed with the surrounding air could ignite, setting the lake on fire, but at that point you probably already would have been made unconscious from the great amount of carbon dioxide. With the toxic gas, fragile systems, and potential instability, this makes Lake Kaiu one of the most terrifying lakes on planet Earth. Coming in at number 5 we have Lake Natron. Located in Tanzania, this lake can be considered the most serene lake in Africa by the looks of it, but swimming in it is a different story. If it's not the red color that deters you from swimming in this lake, maybe you'll reconsider when you learn that the water burns the eyes and skin of any creature that it touches. This is because the lake is surrounded by volcanic geology, meaning the lake's waters are extremely alkaline, with a pH level of 10.5. The water's alkalinity comes from the sodium carbonate and other minerals that flow into the lake from the surrounding hills. Lake Natron is quite shallow, less than 3 meters deep, and varies in width depending on its water level. These waters are so deadly that no creature has been able to adapt and survive to its unique composition. The water of Lake Natron is very high in cyanobacteria. This is an algae that that releases a chemical which in turn damages the cells, nervous system and livers of most of the organisms that have consumed it. Animals naturally make their way to Lake Natron for food, water and to find a place to live. The problem is the incredibly high alkalinity and absurd temperatures in the lake. The impact on wildlife is that it appears to turn them to stone. Many of the birds and animals that drink from Lake Natron wind up dead as a result. The animals, birds and bats that die in the water are calcified and turn into mummified versions of themselves. Lake Natron is one of 2 alkaline lakes in that area of East Africa. The other is Lake Bahi. Both are terminal lakes that do not drain out to any river or sea. They are fed by hot springs and small rivers. As shallow lakes in a hot climate, their water temperatures can reach as high as 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Coming in at number 4, we have the Ganges River. The Ganges River is a great river of the plains of the northern Indian subcontinent. The river used to be sacred to Hindus and seen as the mother goddess Ganga herself, therefore giving the river a religious devotion for millions of people across the world. Yet due to industrialization and capitalism, the river is now the most polluted river on earth. Oftentimes industrialization will occur so quickly that the regulations on that pollution will not catch up. As a result, bodies of water will often get polluted. This is what happened in this specific river, as people had put into the water trash, plastic and pretty much everything else they didn't want to deal with. The result is the now toxic Ganges River. The water of this river has turned into a sludge of humans and industrial waste, not to mention the 40,000 cremated bodies that are dumped in the river every year. Additionally, every day around 3 million liters of sewage is emptied into the Ganges, and only about half of that has undergone any kind of treatment. There's more than just sewage entering this river. Waste from tanneries, chemical plants, textile mills, slaughterhouses and even hospitals is dumped, untreated, into it. Although it is officially sacred, the Ganges is also a vital working river. Its numerous watersheds in the mountains across the Deccan Plateau and its vast delta serve 400 million people, a third of India's population, as a source of drinking water for humans and animals, essential for crop irrigation, travel and fishing. Pollution, carbon emissions and many other foibles will result, and it's because of this industrialization that the Ganges River in India has become one of the most dangerous areas in which to swim.
Number 3 on this list is Lake Shaunie Amusement Park. This has made our list before when it comes to haunted and abandoned amusement parks. What was supposed to be an area of fun and joy is now just a scary place where you might just get taken. Wide Open Country says, when Conley Snitto first showed up with the dreams of building a carnival back in the 1920s, he had no idea about the bloody history of the land itself. It all started in the late 1700s when Mitchell Clay and his family were the first to settle in Mercer County. Mitchell and his wife Phoebe had 14 children together and settled on their 800-acre farm. Tragedy struck the first time when members of the local Shawnee Native American tribe, 2 of the Clay children, Bartley and Tabitha, while they were working on their daily chores. After Mitchell killed some of the Native Americans in retaliation, the Clay family and their property would never be the same. Fast forward to the 20s when Conley Snitto is working on his park with no knowledge that it's actually a burial ground. He funded the Ferris wheel, swing rides, a dance hall, and even a swimming pool. But the haunted history of the area started to catch up with the park and strange things began happening. A young girl passed away while riding the swings and a little boy drowned in addition to 4 other deaths. By the 60s, the park became an abandoned place that seemed doomed. In the 80s, Gaylord White purchased the property in hopes of building new neighborhoods. But after they started getting into the land, they realized that there was more buried than just the Clay family. It was an ancient Native American burial ground that experts believe long predates the Clays, as well as Native American artifacts. White decided not to mess with that kind of history and allowed the amusement park to rust over, now looking as haunted as its past. Needless to say, this park has had quite the history around it, and now it is a hotspot for everything paranormal. If you want to disappear, then there might not be a better spot in the country to go to than Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Number 2 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. One of the scariest and most haunted asylums in the world here, guys. West Virginia Tourism says, located in Weston, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum was a sanctuary for the mentally ill up until 1994. This National Historic Landmark was once an important military post in the Civil War. It was originally built to hold about 250 patients, but during its peak it held 2,400 patients in poor conditions. Ghost experts have flocked here to experience the paranormal for themselves. They've heard blood-curdling screams and seen mysterious shadowy figures. Many say the souls of the insane have never left the halls they once called home. These shadow figures are dangerous too, folks. People have been attacked here and it's been pretty bad. The spirits that live here, there really is nothing human about them anymore. All humanity has left these creatures and now they resemble more of a Dementor from Harry Potter than anything even remotely from this planet. If you go to this asylum, then your disappearance is a very real possibility. And trust me, having one of these things take you, it wouldn't be a good time for anyone. And finally, number 1 on this list is Braxton County. It feels weird just blocking off an entire county, but if you're trying to stay safe and not disappear on us, then you might have to do that. West Virginia Tourism says, on one fall night in 1952, a UFO fell from the sky and landed here in West Virginia. What happened next has been highly contradicted. A group of local children and neighbors went to where the UFO fell and found a mysterious being, with shiny eyes and a round red face, cloaked in a green drape-like material. The later dubbed Flatwoods Monster hissed at the group and disappeared. The witnesses also reported a pungent smell that made them feel nauseous. The following day, when investigators inspected the site, they found skid marks and an odd, gummy deposit, but no strange smell. So for all we know, there is still some alien creature just running around these parks and doing whatever it wants. That's really not a reassuring thought here, folks, and not something that I think that we should be okay with. Like, I feel as if this kind of needs to be addressed by the American government or something like that. I guess it's possible that they have conducted an operation to catch this thing and we just don't know about it. Either way, until we have definitive proof that this thing is gone for good, I'd avoid Braxton County altogether.
In at number 5, we have the boiling lake in Dominica. When you see steam rising from a lake, you would immediately think that it's a nice and relaxing hot spring. But don't be fooled by the boiling lake in Dominica, because like in the name, this lake is actually boiling water. The boiling lake is flooded fumarole located in Montrose Pitons National Park, a World Heritage Site on the island of Dominica. Located 6.5 miles east of Dominica's capital Roseau, is filled with bubbling greyish blue water that is usually enveloped in a cloud of vapor. The boiling lake is approximately 200 to 250 feet across and is the second largest hot lake in the world. A swim here would basically be self-induced torture, as you'll be swimming in boiling water. The reason this lake is just so dangerous is that its beautiful cloudy blue surface is hiding a lake of magma underneath. This causes the lake's water to reach boiling point, but no one's sure what the exact temperatures really are. The shore's temperature has been recorded to be in between 185 and 197 Fahrenheit, but no one could measure the central and hottest area of the lake because it's impossible to get there safely. Throughout the years, there have been multiple governments and police warnings about visiting the lake, and just in February of 2022 there was a public warning released to try and stop reckless and irresponsible acts that occur at the lake. As it was brought to the attention of Dominica's Forestry Division that people have attempted to swim in the boiling lake during periods of instability. These acts are risky, as in the lake's time of instability, harmful gases such as carbon dioxide and small steam explosions are more common. There have been many accidents that have happened at the boiling lake. In one case, 2 members of a 3-man hiking party lost their life due to the lake being asphyxiated and suddenly releasing volcanic gases, causing the men to fall from a great height. Coming in at number 4, we have Lake Karacay. This lake on the surface may look beautiful, but it's actually the most polluted spot on the planet. Located in Russia, the lake has been tainted by nearby nuclear facilities, and because of this, can be considered the most polluted place on Earth. In 1990, just standing on the shore for an hour at the lake would give you a radiation dose of 600 roentgen, which is more than enough to kill you. The lake is located within the Mayak Production Association, one of the largest and leakiest nuclear facilities in Russia, and was built in 1946. The Russian government kept Mayak entirely secret until 1990, and it spent that period of invisibility mainly having nuclear meltdowns and dumping waste into the river. By the time Mayak's existence science was officially acknowledged, there had been a 21% increase in cancer incidence, a 25% increase in birth defects, and a 41% increase in leukemia in the surrounding region of Chelyabinsk. The Teka River, which provided water to nearby villages and was very close to the Karachay, was so contaminated that up to 65% of locals fell ill with radiation sickness. Doctors had to call the sickness a special disease because as long as the facility was secret, they weren't allowed to mention radiation in their diagnosis. The lake began to die, and in 1968, the wind blew away radiation dust, affecting the air, water, food, and people. This resulted in 500,000 people getting sick due to this dust. Lake Karachay is currently filled with concrete blocks placed there between 1978 and 1986. However, the hollow concrete has only prevented the lake from shifting away and has not solved the pollution problem.
Number 3. The Capuchin Catacombs, Palermo, Italy. Our next entry is going to take us to Sicily, a beautiful city famous for its cathedrals, its beaches, incredible cuisine, and one of the scariest places on earth with the Capuchin Catacombs. Hey, just a heads up, by the way, I know these are all pretty freaky, but this one's actually pretty freaky to look at, so don't say I didn't warn you none. From the outside, the Capuchin Monastery looks like any other big old church building, but on the inside, you can descend into the catacombs and wander through the hallowed halls where the walls are decked and the benches are posed, and tucked into open coffins are the bodies of roughly 8,000 people. Now, as you can see, they have a slightly different idea of respect for their dead. We, tend to bury them. Here, they nail them to the walls. The corpses are dressed to their best, since, gotta look good. You don't know who could see. These dark catacombs are separated into a few different sections, each corresponding to the type of people that they were in life. Religious figures go in one room, doctors and professionals in another. There's a room for women. There's a room for infants. The corpses go back a while. It's like a whole museum of bodies in there, with the longest staying guest being that of a friar from the 16th century. Imagine the smell. The unique, dry atmosphere of the catacombs allow for the mummification process to work just wonders, with some of the corpses being referred to as sleeping beauties, which, I don't know, too dark, even for me. The process of the mummification is pretty horrifying, so obviously I'm going to tell you. Priests would lay the bodies on shelves and I just ate, I'm sorry. They would let the body drip until they were completely drained of all fluids. A year later, they would be rinsed with vinegar. Oh my god, I don't know why vinegar was grosser. They'd be dressed in their best clothing and kept for all eternity. Now, the catacombs are a popular tourist destination now, if not an unusual one. Definitely, I think, any personal bias aside, you can agree it's an interesting place to go. I'm probably good, though. I feel like I can smell that room from here, and I am not interested in getting any closer. Number 2, the Skellic Ossuary, Czech Republic. Well, our last entry was about a church building decorated with the remains of the dead, so I thought maybe I'd mix it up just a little bit with our next entry and do another church building decorated with body parts. Welcome to the Skellic Ossuary in the Czech Republic, and hey, how often do you get to use ossuary in a sentence? Today is a great day for me. Most people know the ossuary by its colloquial nickname, the Bone Church, and it's hard to disagree with that, even if that does sound like it's an area from one of the Dark Souls games. This place looks like it was interior designed by Leatherface with an infinite budget. The centerpiece and magnum opus of the church is a haunting bone chandelier composed of almost every bone in the human body. Now, that would be more than enough to be one of the scariest places on earth, but that is literally just the beginning. Let's run through it. You've got 2 bone chalices, 4 bone candelabras, 6 bone pyramids, a bone family crest, skull candle holders, and a skeleton partridge in a bone pear tree. There's bones wrapped and decorating all across the church like the world's worst Christmas decorations. They got bone streamers pretty much like a scary birthday party. So how did this happen? Did they just let a local lunatic decorate the place? Well, way back when the ossuary was the abbot of the Skellic Monastery, this holy soil was a very appealing gravesite for people and religious figures, and just about everybody wanted to get their bones buried here. The problem therein is that when way too many people all want to be stored and buried in the same place, eventually things start to pile up and you got nowhere to put the bones. So, in the 18th century, a woodcarver was tasked with finding a solution to this grim problem, and he came up with the wonderfully terrifying idea of turning them into art. God bless our creative fellows. He bleached all of the bones to make sure they looked gorgeous and uniform, and in the scariest of ways, I kind of agree. It's beautiful in a horrifying sense. Number 1, Centralia, Pennsylvania. I think the best horror movies and properties are based on real things. I think the Overlook Hotel from The Shining is based on the Stanley Hotel in Colorado, Conjuring and Annabelle based on Ed and Lorraine Warren, obviously, Leatherface based on Ed Gein, and the town of Silent Hill from the Silent Hill movies was based on Centralia, Pennsylvania, where an infamous coal mine fire abandoned the town, leaving only fog and a rain of ash over the deserted streets. In 1962, a fire started in a landfill and spread to the coal tunnels that lay deep beneath, thousands of feet below the surface of the town. Rescue crews tried their level best to put out the raging flame, but despite their best efforts, the flame caught a coal seam where it now started raging burning, where it's still doing that to this day. The town was abandoned under government orders, and a never-ending rain of ash gave off the impression of a horrifying abandoned resort town now made famous by Silent Hill. Now it's worth noting, and I'm only including this because I'm like a Silent Hill lunatic fan, this is just the depiction in the films. The original video game series Silent Hill is just a scary town. It's not based on this one. The thing it actually takes the most inspiration from, and I swear this is real, is Kindergarten Cop. Please look this up after this video. The school in Silent Hill is the school from Kindergarten Cop. Anyway, Centralia now is effectively erased. The Pennsylvania government removed its zip codes, encouraged everybody to get the heck out of Dodge, and took all the official government property and all the names off the signs and stuff off. But few residents could not be deterred and still remain in the ghost town, with some reports saying that 6 people are still living there, clinging to the life that they had stolen from them by disaster and left forgotten by their own government. Even Hollywood actually no longer films movies there. The last couple of productions that tried said that the graffiti and desolation of the town has made it look too realistic as a ghost town to be used to film in. So if you ever happen to be passing through Centralia, just be nice, okay? They have been through a lot.
Number 5 on this list is Pine Gap. Pine Gap is a massive military base that's hid away in the Australian outback, completely away from the public's view. It's jointly run and occupied by the American and Australian governments. The airspace over top of it is a complete no-fly zone, and the complex itself is obviously very locked off. Many of the locals have come to speak of this place as Area 51 of Australia. Now, unlike Area 51, this place hasn't been linked to aliens. It's actually been linked to a super secret, super high-tech surveillance system. At this point, it kind of feels like common knowledge that the government is occasionally peeking in on our conversations. Well, Pine Gap in Australia may be the spot that most of that happens at. Echelon was the codename given to a massive signals intelligence collection device. It's believed that this location in Australia collects this information and stores it there. Think about that. A massive site out in the middle of the outback with all of our info stored on a massive hard drives at somebody's fingertips. With over 800 people apparently employed at this base, there are 800 several individuals that know more about you than I think any of us would like. Your entire communications history is just waiting there to be revealed to the public. It's no wonder that this place isn't talked about too much, because think about how damaging it could be if that info was leaked to the public or somebody got a hold of it. The amount of secrets that could be discovered by spending an hour or two at that place is honestly difficult to comprehend. Number 4 on this list is Mchitka Island. Mchitka Island is a volcanic island that's part of the Aleutian Islands. And for those of you who aren't aware, the Aleutian Islands are a grouping of islands off of the coast of Alaska that stretch into the Pacific Ocean. Now, this place is really interesting because by all accounts, hardly anybody lives there at all. In fact, it's possible that there are no permanent residents there whatsoever. Or that's just what the government wants us to think. Tons of areas on this island just simply can't be found on Google Earth. This would probably go completely unnoticed if it wasn't for the fact that the Americans used this place as a spot for nuclear testing several decades ago. From the 50s to the 70s, this was a spot used by the American government to test out their weapons. Obviously, you don't really want the world knowing about this or seeing your capabilities, so keeping it a secret would be important. This apparently ceased in the 70s, but then it begs the question, why is it blotted out on Google Earth? Why are there sections of this island that the world world can't see. Starts to make you think that maybe this isn't just an innocent Aleutian island in the Pacific Ocean, but actually a spot that never stopped testing weapons. Or if they did stop testing them, then maybe this is where they're developing them now. If I'm about to do something shady, then an island in the middle of nowhere with no permanent residents would certainly be my spot of choice. It's very possible that the American government feels the same way.
Number 3. Laal House and Bahay Nupula. These two houses share a similar dark and horrific history. The Laal House was built in 1920 and was occupied by the head of the Laal clans, Don Roberto and Donna Victorina. But during the Second World War, Japanese soldiers took over the home and used it as a den to severely harm victims. Much like the Laal House, Bahay Nupula was used as a base where they inflicted equally inhumane, despicable acts onto women. During the house's Japanese soldier occupation, soldiers would abduct citizens, accuse them of being American spies, and then harm them in every way known to man. The Laal House is now considered one of the most haunted houses in the Philippines. Caretakers who work at the house have claimed to see headless ghosts dressed in soldiers' uniforms. They've said that they hear doors opening and closing, and some even said that they can still hear the ear-splitting screams and begs from the people who experienced torment in the house. The Laal House has become a popular tourist attraction, drawing visitors who are intrigued by its rich history and supernatural oddities. Despite its strange reputation, the Laal House stands as a testament to Baguio's architectural heritage and continues to fascinate both history enthusiasts and ghost hunters. Bahay Nupula is a deep red house that is labeled as haunted because of the horrendous acts that Japanese soldiers forced onto abducted victims during World War II. At the time, it is said that Filipino guerrillas first used the house as a safe haven, where they would strategize and come together in the trying time. But Japanese soldiers took over the home. They left them without food until they perished. They violated local women without mercy, and they harmed people at random. The house is currently abandoned, but people who live near the area have reported hearing screams and wails calling out for help, and have even seen a group of ghostly Japanese soldiers walking around the house's property. The acts that were committed against innocent people are appalling and heartbreaking. Again, these houses are another example of deeply saddening locations that have become dark tourism attractions. Number 2, Ozone Disco. On March 18, 1996, at 11:35 p.m., the Philippines witnessed one of the deadliest nightclub disasters in its history, the Ozone Disco tragedy. The incident occurred at the Ozone Disco, a popular nightclub located in Quezon City, Metro Manila. It was a night that would forever haunt the nation's collective memory, leaving behind a legacy of grief, lessons learned, and calls for stricter safety regulations. That horrific night, the club was packed with hundreds of excited people, celebrating the end of the school year. The nightclub had gained a reputation for its trendy music and vibrant atmosphere, which drew a young and energetic crowd. The tragedy unfolded when an electric malfunction led to a massive fire which spread rapidly throughout the disco. The nightclub's inadequate safety measures exacerbated the situation. There was only one narrow exit. The club was at least 300 people over capacity, and the club itself did not have adequate emergency exits. As the flames engulfed the nightclub, screams for help filled the air. People clamored to locked doors, ending up in piles as the hot blazes tore at their skin. Tragically, 162 lives were lost that night, and countless others suffered injuries. Families were torn apart, and the nation was left in mourning. The Ozone Disco tragedy serves as a grim reminder of the importance of stringent safety standards in public establishments. The aftermath of the Ozone Disco tragedy prompted widespread outrage and calls for accountability. Investigations revealed a shocking lack of adherence to fire safety regulations and building codes. The nightclub's owners were subsequently charged with criminal negligence, and several government officials faced disciplinary actions for failing to enforce safety standards. The tragedy also led to significant changes in the Philippines' approach to fire safety and building regulations. It prompted the government to revisit and strengthen existing laws, ensuring that public establishments adhere to safety standards more rigorously. Moreover, the disaster prompted greater awareness among the public about the importance of fire safety and the need for responsible business practices. The Ozone Disco tragedy is a painful chapter in the Philippines' history, but it has not been forgotten. Each year on March 18th, memorial services and remembrances are held to honor the victims and reflect on the lessons learned. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of negligence and the critical importance of prioritizing safety in public places. The abandoned disco has since been boarded up. You cannot legally enter the building where such a tragedy occurred. People who have managed to disregard the public trespassing laws have described hearing the screams of victims, a clawing at the door, and the faint sound of crackling music, sounding as though the notes themselves were burning into ash. Number 1. Manila Film Center. The Manila Film Center is an iconic and controversial structure. It stands as a symbol of both the Philippines' aspirations in the world of cinema and the dark shadows that sometimes loom over the industry. Located on the longshore of Manila Bay, this controversial building was constructed as a venue for the 1982 Manila International Film Festival, an event that planned to showcase both Filipino and international cinema. However, the story behind its construction and the subsequent events have left a permanent mark on the country's history. It was built during the regime of the then President Ferdinand Marcos, and the construction of the Manila Film Center was surrounded by secrecy and controversy. To meet the tight deadline for the festival's opening, an estimated 4,000 workers were employed, working round-the-clock in hazardous conditions. Tragically, a portion of the building collapsed on November 17, 1981, burying several workers under the rubble, still alive. At the demand of the government to expedite the center's completion, the workers' bodies, alive and dead, were covered in cement and left entombed within the structure. Despite this tragedy, the Manila Film Center still opened its doors on January 18, 1982, with much fanfare. It became a hub for film enthusiasts and filmmakers, hosting international film screenings and competitions, and most of them had no idea that they were standing on top of a mass grave. However, the controversy surrounding its construction continued to haunt the venue. Rumors of paranormal activities, particularly ghosts of the workers who lost their lives during the construction, further fueled the Manila Film Center's infamy. In the years that followed, the Manila Film Center faced challenges, including changes in ownership and management. It fell into disrepair and was largely abandoned, becoming a dilapidated and spooky relic of the past. Various proposals for its renovation and revitalization were put forward, but none of them came to fruition. Despite its troubled history, the Manila Film Center remains a significant piece of architectural heritage in the Philippines. In recent years, there have been renewed efforts to restore and repurpose the building. Some have suggested transforming it into a cultural and arts center, while others see its potential as value for events and expeditions, or others see its potential as a venue for events and exhibitions. The government has even received and reviewed applications for the renovations and proposals for the building's future. There's no memorial dedication for the workers that lost their lives, and the government does not accept the blame or take responsibility for the tragedy that occurred because of their impatience. Many people travel from all over the world and country hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghosts of fallen workers. That brings us to the end of the video. Please take the time to research what is currently happening in the world and take time to listen to the stories of people who have lived through the experience. People are so desensitized now that it can be difficult to fully register how horrific a lot of tragedies are when they're presented as words on paper or are shared by a detached, emotionless newscaster. Please listen to people's stories, spread awareness, and do what you can to help.